The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people on Earth looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They dreamed of meeting other beings, of exploring distant worlds, of becoming part of something bigger than themselves. When they finally built ships fast enough to leave their solar system, they thought their dreams would come true. They were wrong. Park. Taeho was only 7 years old when his grandmother told him the story for the first time. She sat by his bed in their small apartment in Busan, her old hands holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. Her eyes were distant, looking at something far away that the little boy could not see. "I was there," she said softly. "I was one of the first humans to stand before the Galactic Council. We were so excited, Taeho. So full of hope." She had been young then, a brilliant diplomat chosen to represent all of Earth. The journey to the Citadel of Vorn had taken 3 months. The Citadel was a massive space station, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It floated in a system with no planets, surrounded by the warships of 12 powerful species. These 12 races ruled the galaxy. They called themselves the Galactic Confederation, and they had controlled known space for over 50,000 years. "What happened, grandmother?" young Taeho asked. The old woman's face grew hard. "They laughed at us." The council chamber had been enormous, built for beings much larger than humans. She had stood at the center, a tiny figure surrounded by giants. The Velthari were there, creatures made of living crystal that glowed with inner light. The Ormathi attended to, massive beings with 6 arms and skin like stone. There were 10 other species, each more alien than the last. She had spoken of peace. She had talked about trade and cooperation. She had offered friendship on behalf of all humanity. High Arbiter Malkatha of the Velthari had responded. His crystalline body had shifted colors as he spoke, from blue to a deep, angry red. "You dare come here? You primitive creatures. You have been killing each other since you climbed down from trees. You poison your own world. You cannot even stop fighting among yourselves." The other council members had agreed. One by one, they rejected humanity. They called Earth a dangerous planet full of violent animals. They said humans were too young, too aggressive, too stupid to join galactic society. "We voted to quarantine your species," Molkith had announced. "You will stay in your little corner of space. You will not expand. You will not trade. You will not contact any civilized species. Perhaps in 10,000 years, if you do not destroy yourselves, we will consider looking at you again." That was 300 years ago. Taeho grew up with that story burning in his heart. His grandmother died when he was 15, still hoping that one day humanity would be accepted. She never saw that day come. Now Taeho was 62 years old. His hair was gray, but his body was still strong thanks to genetic treatments that humans had developed in their long isolation. He stood on the bridge of the battleship Dawn of Terra. Looking out at the stars that had rejected his people for so long, he was Admiral Park Taeho now, commander of Earth's first expeditionary fleet. Behind him, 200 warships waited in formation. But these ships were not what made him smile. The real weapons were hidden elsewhere, in places the galaxy would never expect. On Earth, in a government building in Seoul, President Kang Yuna was having a very bad day. She sat at her desk reading the latest message from the Galactic Council. It was the 31st formal rejection in 3 centuries. "The Council has reviewed your petition for membership," the message read. "Your request is denied. Humanity remains under quarantine until further notice. Any attempt to expand beyond your designated borders will be met with military force." Yuna was 48 years old. She had been president for 6 years, and she had spent all of them trying to find a peaceful solution. She had sent diplomats. She had offered technology. She had begged, pleaded, and bargained. Nothing worked. General Osung sat across from her, a military man who had spent his whole life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. He was 60 years old, with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too much. "They will never accept us," he said quietly. "They are afraid of us. They have been afraid since the first day they discovered our planet." "Afraid? They have 10,000 warships. They have technology we cannot match. What could they possibly fear from us? Osung smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They fear how fast we learn. In 300 years, we went from chemical rockets to ships that can cross the galaxy. We developed weapons, they said, were impossible. We built things they have never seen. He leaned forward. Every species in the Confederation took millions of years to reach their current level. We did it in centuries. That terrifies them. The president was silent for a long moment. Outside her window, the city of souls stretched to the horizon. 50 million people lived there, going about their daily lives. They had jobs and families and dreams. Most of them had never even seen an alien, thanks to the quarantine. If we fight them, she said slowly, millions will die. We do not fight them, Osung replied. Humanity will be prisoners forever. Our children and their children will grow up in a cage looking at stars they can never reach. Una closed her eyes. She thought of her own daughter, only 12 years old. She thought of all the children on Earth growing up under alien rules they had no voice in making. What do you need? She asked. Osung reached into his jacket and pulled out a single data chip. Operation Sunbreak has been ready for 40 years. We have been waiting for someone brave enough to give the order. The president took the chip. It felt heavy in her hand, heavier than anything she had ever held. On this tiny piece of technology was a plan that would change the galaxy forever. If I do this, she said, there is no going back. No, Osung agreed. There is not, Una thought of Admiral Park Tahoe's grandmother, standing alone before the council, asking only for peace. She thought of 300 years of silence, of rejection, of humiliation. They want to treat us like animals, she said softly. Perhaps it is time we show them what kind of animals we really are. She inserted the chip into her computer. Across the solar system, in hidden bases and secret stations, lights began to turn on. Weapons that had waited for decades powered up. Soldiers who had trained their whole lives received orders they had been waiting for. Humanity was done asking permission. The stars had always called to them now. They were going to answer. Commander Buchanan had never wanted to be a soldier. When she was a little girl growing up in Incheon, she had dreamed of being a painter. She loved the way colors mixed together, the way a blank canvas could become anything she imagined. Her mother still kept her childhood paintings on the walls of their family home, but Hannah had also grown up hearing the stories. Stories of the quarantine. Stories of human ships destroyed for flying too far from Earth. Stories of families torn apart because they dared to dream of other worlds. By the time she was 18, she understood that sometimes people had to fight for the right to paint, to dream, to live. Now she was 41 years old, standing on the bridge of the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. The Inn's Resolve was a beautiful ship, sleek and deadly. It had taken 50 years to build in secret, hidden in the asteroid fields where no alien satellite could see. Every piece of it represented human determination, human genius, human refusal to accept the fate the galaxy had chosen for them. Commander, her communications officer said, "We are in position. All frequencies are open." Hannah looked around her bridge. Her crew was young, most of them born after the last rejection from the council. They had never known anything but the quarantine. They had never felt the hope that the older generations once had. All they knew was that humanity was trapped, and that had to change. "Are you ready?" she asked them. Her weapons officer, a young man named Kim Jae, nodded. "We have been ready for 300 years, Hannah smiled. She pressed a button on her chair, and suddenly, she was connected to every communication system in the known galaxy. Every ship, every station, every planet with a receiver would hear her next words. To the Galactic Council and all member species of the Confederation, she began, her voice calm and clear. "My name is Commander Buchanan of the Earth Defense Force. I speak on behalf of humanity." In the council chamber on Vorn, High Arbiter Mulketh was in the middle of a boring meeting about trade routes when Hannah's face appeared on every screen. He tried to shut it off, but nothing worked. Human technology had bypassed every security system the Confederation had. For 300 years, Hannah continued, humanity has asked only for peace. We sent diplomats to your citadel. We offered friendship and cooperation. We asked to join your community of species, to contribute our knowledge and learn from yours. On 1,000 worlds, aliens stopped what they were doing to listen. Most had never seen a human before. They were surprised by how small these creatures looked, how fragile they seemed. You gave us nothing but contempt, Hannah said. When we asked for peace, you laughed. When we asked for trade, you built blockades around our system. When we asked for recognition, you called us animals and turned us away. Her voice grew harder now, though she did not raise it. The calm was almost more frightening than anger would have been. We asked for 30 generations. Our children grew up watching the stars, knowing they could never reach them. Our old people died, still hoping for acceptance that never came. Our scientists made discoveries they could never share. Our artists created works that no one outside our little corner of space would ever see. She paused, and in that silence, the galaxy held its breath. We will ask no more. On Vorn, Malkuth felt his crystalline body grow cold. Something was wrong. This was not how prey was supposed to speak. In 30 standard rotations, Hannah announced, humanity will take by force what we were denied by prejudice. Every system within 50 light-years of Sol is hereby claimed as human territory. Any Confederation vessel found within this space after the deadline will be considered hostile and will be destroyed. Across the galaxy, the silence broke into laughter. On the Velthari homeworld, military commanders pointed at the screens and made jokes. 50 light-years. That included dozens of Confederation outposts, 3 mining colonies, and a major trade route. The humans thought they could just take all of that. The Velthari Third Armada alone had 800 warships. The humans had maybe 200, and most of those were small patrol vessels. It would be a massacre. But not everyone was laughing. On a small moon in the outer territories, an old Ormathy merchant named Grell watched the broadcast with different eyes. He had lived a long time, traded with many species, and he had learned one important thing. It was always the quiet ones you had to watch. They would not make this threat, he muttered to himself, unless they had something to back it up. Back on Earth, General Osung watched the broadcast from his command center deep beneath the Himalayan mountains. The base had been built 200 years ago, carved out of solid rock and hidden so well that no alien satellite had ever found it. Phase 1 complete. Commander B. Kanna reported through a secure channel. The message has been delivered. Well done, Commander, Osung replied. Now, we wait. President Kong Yuna was with him, watching the screens that showed alien reactions from across the galaxy. Most were laughing, just as they had expected. Good. Arrogant enemies made mistakes. They will come for us, Yuna said. So Sung agreed. The Velthari will not let this insult stand. They will send a fleet to Earth within the deadline, probably before. They will want to crush us quickly, to make an example. And when they arrive? Osung pointed to a map of the solar system. Red dots marked locations throughout the asteroid belt, on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, even on distant Pluto. There were hundreds of them. Every one of those dots is a weapon, he explained. We have spent 40 years turning our solar system into a fortress. The aliens think we are weak because they only see our ships. They do not see what we have hidden in the dark. Lieutenant Shinji-1, the young woman who commanded humanity's intelligence network, approached with a tablet. Sir, we are picking up communications from the Velthari command. They are mobilizing the Third Armada. How many ships? 800 confirmed. They will arrive in 15 rotations, half the deadline we gave them. Osung nodded. He had expected this. The Velthari were proud and cruel. They would want to punish humanity for daring to threaten them. Let them come, he said. Make sure our people are ready. Across the solar system, the word went out. Soldiers reported to their posts. Engineers ran final checks on weapons that had waited decades to be fired. Pilots climbed into fighters hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids. Captain Yundasu received his orders aboard the Fury of Sol, a massive battleship hidden inside the moon Ganymede. He had been stationed there for 3 years, living inside a frozen moon, waiting for a day that some thought would never come. All hands to battle stations, he announced. This is not a drill. The enemy is coming. Around Jupiter, 47 moons and asteroids that seemed dead and empty began to wake up. Power systems that had been sleeping for years came online. Weapons that could crack planets began their targeting sequences. The Confederation thought they were sending a fleet to punish some primitive animals. They were actually flying into a trap that had been 40 years in the F. Making back on the resolve, Commander Beak Hanna looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy fleet was gathering. Soon, there would be battle. Soon, there would be death. She thought of her mother, still keeping those childhood paintings on her wall. I wanted to create beautiful things, she whispered to herself. But first, we have to survive. She turned to her crew. Take us to position Gamma. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity can do. The ship jumped into hyperspace. Leaving nothing behind but a fading glow, the warning had been given. Now came the war. Fleet. Commander Velcris of the Velthri Third Armada had conquered 17 species in his long career. He had burned cities and shattered armies. His name was spoken with fear across 100 worlds. When the order came to punish the humans, he accepted it with something close to joy. Finally, he said to his officers as his fleet prepared to jump, "We can end this problem once and for all. These mammals have annoyed the Council for too long." His flagship, the Eternal Crystal, was the largest warship in the Confederation. It stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern, carrying enough weapons to destroy a planet. Behind it, 799 other ships formed a wall of death that had never been defeated. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "we are approaching the human system. No enemy vessels detected on long-range scans." Alcris made a sound that passed for laughter among his people. "Of course not. They are hiding. They know they cannot face us in open battle." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter, the largest planet in the human solar system. Velcris had chosen this location specifically. From here, he could strike at Earth, Mars, or any of the human colonies. He wanted them to see him coming. He wanted them to feel fear, but as his sensors swept the area, something strange appeared on the screens. "Commander," the officer said, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. "I am reading unusual energy signatures from several of the moons." "Unusual how?" "They appear to be powering up." Deep inside Ganymede, Captain Yundesu smiled. He sat in the command chair of the Fury of Sol, surrounded by screens showing the enemy fleet. 800 ships, just as intelligence had predicted. They had arranged themselves in a standard Confederation battle formation, confident and proud. They had no idea what was about to happen. "All stations report ready," his first officer announced. "Moon batteries are at full power. Targeting solutions are locked." Daesu had been a soldier for 25 years. He had trained for this moment since he was a young man, studying tactics and weapons that most humans did not even know existed. Now, finally, all that preparation would mean something. "Connect me to General Osun," he ordered. The general's face appeared on his screen. "Captain Yoon, are you in position?" "Yes, sir. The enemy has arrived exactly where we expected them." Osun nodded. In the command center beneath the Himalayas, dozens of officers watched screens showing every ship in the solar system. President Kong Nuna stood beside him, her face pale but determined. "Captain," she said, "you may fire when ready." Daesu ended the communication and looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had never been in real combat. But their eyes were steady, and their hands did not shake. "Today," he said, "we change history. All batteries, fire." The surface of Ganymede cracked open. What had looked like ice and rock was actually armor, hiding weapons that had been charging for decades. Plasma cannons the size of buildings emerged from the frozen ground. Railguns capable of throwing projectiles at a fraction of light speed pointed at the sky. Ganymede was not alone. Across the Jupiter system, 47 moons and asteroids revealed their true nature. Callisto opened fire. Europa became a storm of missiles. Io, with its volcanic surface, launched weapons powered by the heat of the planet itself. On the Eternal Crystal, Commander Velcris watched in horror as the sky filled with death. His shields, designed to deflect weapons from other ships, could not handle the concentrated firepower of celestial bodies. Each moon was firing weapons that drew power from its entire core. Evasive maneuvers. He screamed. All ships, scatter. It was too late. The first wave of fire struck the outer ships of his formation. The Velthari vessels were strong, built from materials that had taken millions of years to develop. They lasted almost 3 seconds before breaking apart. The second wave hit the middle of the fleet. 100 ships vanished in balls of light. The third wave reached the eternal crystal itself. Shields are failing, someone shouted. Hull breach on decks 7 through 15. Velcris could not believe what he was seeing. His invincible fleet, the terror of 1,000 worlds, was being destroyed by rocks. The humans had turned their own moons into weapons, and not a single human ship had even shown itself. Fall back, he ordered. Jump to hyperspace. All ships, retreat? But the moons had thought of that too. Some of them were not firing weapons at all. They were firing interference signals, jamming every hyperspace frequency. The Velthari ships could not run. In 18 minutes it was over 800 ships. 50,000 Velthari soldiers. The pride of the Confederation fleet. All of it became expanding clouds of debris mixed with ice from Jupiter's moons. Not a single human had died. Deep in Ganymede, Captain Yoon Dae-soo watched the last enemy vessel explode. His crew was silent, staring at their screens in disbelief. They had trained for years, imagined this moment 1,000 times. But the reality was somehow harder to accept than the dream. It worked, his first officer whispered. It actually worked. Out. Dasu nodded slowly. Report to command. Enemy fleet destroyed. No human casualties. On Vorn, High Arbiter Molkith received the report in his private chambers. He read it 3 times, certain there must be some mistake. The third armada destroyed. In less than 20 minutes? By moons? His crystalline body, which had remained stable for 4,000 years, began to crack with stress. Small fractures appeared across his surface, something that only happened when a Velthari experienced extreme emotion. Impossible, he said to himself. This is impossible. But the evidence was there. Sensor data from the few automated probes that had survived showed everything. The moons opening up, the weapons firing, the fleet dying. The humans had not just beaten the armada, they had slaughtered it without even engaging in a proper battle. Lieutenant Shin. Juan intercepted Molketh's next communication to the council. She sat in her intelligence post, monitoring alien signals across the galaxy. And what she heard made her smile. Emergency session, Molketh was saying, his voice shaking in a way the arrogant arbiter had never shown before. The humans. They have been preparing. For everything. We need to mobilize all fleets immediately. This is not what we thought it was. G1 sent the recording to General Oh Sung. The old soldier listened to it with satisfaction. They are finally afraid, he said. President Kong Yuno was less happy. They will not underestimate us again. The next fleet they send will be larger. They may send everything they have. Let them, Oh Sung replied. We have more surprises waiting. On the bridge of the Inn's resolve, Commander Buchanan received the news of the victory. Her crew cheered, embracing each other, crying with relief and joy. For the first time in 300 years, humanity had won, but Hannah did not celebrate. She looked out at the stars and thought about what came next. This was only the first battle. The Council had thousands more ships, millions more soldiers. They would come again, and they would be angry. Enjoy this moment, she told her crew quietly. We have earned it. But remember, this is just the beginning. Across the solar system, humanity celebrated. People danced in the streets, waved flags, cried tears they had held back for generations. For 300 years, they had been prisoners. Now, they had shown the galaxy that the cage was broken. Admiral Park Tae-ho watched the celebrations from the bridge of the dawn of Terra. He thought of his grandmother, who had stood alone before the council so long ago. She had asked for peace and received only contempt. "We tried it your way, grandmother," he said softly. They would not listen. "Now, we try ours." He turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet. The real war is about to begin." The humans had sent their warning. The galaxy had laughed. No one was laughing now. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the first time in 2,000 years. The great chamber on Vorn, built to show the power and majesty of the 12 ruling species, now felt like a tomb. Representatives from 11 species sat in their designated places. The Velthary section was notably quiet, its members refusing to meet anyone's eyes. High Arbiter Molkith stood at the center, his crystalline form still showing the cracks from his earlier stress. He had not been able to repair them. Every time he thought about the destroyed fleet, new fractures appeared. "We must respond immediately," the Ormothy representative said, his 6 arms waving with agitation. "Send the combined fleet. All 10,000 ships. Crush these humans before they can strike again." "And what if they have turned other moons into weapons?" another representative asked. "What if they have prepared defenses we have not seen?" Fear filled the chamber. These species had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They had conquered and enslaved and destroyed anyone who opposed them. They had never been afraid before. "We know nothing about their true capabilities," someone admitted. "We assumed they were primitive. We were wrong." Nobody noticed the small shuttle that docked at the lower rings of the Citadel. Nobody saw the 2 humans walk through the corridors that had never felt human footsteps before. The security systems somehow did not raise any alarms. Ambassador Nohyan was 73 years old. His hair was white, his face lined with age, but his steps were steady and his eyes were sharp. He had spent his entire life studying the alien species that had rejected his people. He knew their languages, their customs, their secrets. He knew things they thought nobody outside their own species could know. Beside him walked Dr. Immune Bai, a woman of 52 who was considered the greatest xenobiologist humanity had ever produced. She carried a single datapad, holding information that had taken 3 centuries to gather. In her hands was the truth about the Galactic Council, and it was a truth they desperately wanted to hide. The doors of the council chamber opened without warning. The representatives turned, confused, and saw 2 small figures walking toward them. Humans, in the heart of the Citadel, alone, at security. Molkith shouted, his body flashing red with alarm. How did they get in here? Guards. But no guards came. The security systems remained silent. The doors did not close. Ambassador Nohan smiled as he walked to the center of the chamber, where only the highest representatives were allowed to stand. He looked around at the powerful beings who had kept his people in chains for 300 years. "Do not bother calling for help," he said calmly. "Your systems are not responding to you right now. They are responding to us." The Ormothy representative stood up, towering over the small human. "You dare come here? After what you have done? After you murdered 50,000 Velthary soldiers?" "Murdered?" Dr. Immune Bai spoke for the first time, her voice cold. "Your people have murdered millions of humans over the centuries. Ships destroyed for flying too far from Earth. Colonies bombed for existing. Children killed because their parents dreamed of freedom." She held up her datapad. "We have records of everything. Would you like to see them?" Molkith stepped forward, his cracked form making strange sounds. "Whatever you think you know, human, you are wrong. We are the Council. We have ruled this galaxy since before your ancestors could walk upright. You cannot threaten us." Shen nodded slowly. "You are right. We are not here to threaten you. We are here to explain." Pressed a button on his wrist, and suddenly every screen in the chamber lit up with information. Documents in alien languages. Recordings of private conversations. Maps of secret military bases. Financial records showing hidden transactions. "For 300 years, Hyan said, you have been studying us, watching us, trying to understand the strange primitive species on the edge of your territory." He spread his arms wide. "What you did not realize is that we were studying you too." The information kept flowing across the screens. Dr. Immune Bai walked among the shocked representatives, pointing at different sections. The Velthari Civil War, she said. A conflict between your northern and southern factions that you have hidden from the rest of the Council for 800 years. It has cost you 20% of your population and weakened your empire significantly. Molkith's cracks spread further. How did you... That information is the Ormathy reproductive crisis, Im continued. Your species has been failing to produce viable offspring for 6 generations. At current rates, you will be extinct in 4,000 years. You have been hiding this by cloning, but the clones are increasingly unstable. The Ormathy representative sat down heavily, his 6 arms trembling. The Kishari economic collapse. The Balori plague that killed half your homeworld. The true reason the Council has rejected every new species for the past 10,000 years. Im smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You are not protecting the galaxy from dangerous newcomers. You are protecting yourselves from competition because you know your civilizations are dying. Silence filled the chamber. The representatives of 11 species stared at the 2 humans with something they had not felt in thousands of years. Fear. Real. Fear Ambassador Heian stepped forward again. You kept us out because you were afraid of us. And looking at this data, I understand why. He pointed at a graph showing technological development rates across species. The lines for the Council species were nearly flat, showing almost no advancement over millions of years. The line for humanity shot upward like a rocket. In 300 years of isolation, Han said, we went from chemical rockets to gravity manipulation, from radio waves to quantum communication, from fragile bodies to genetic enhancement that your scientists say should take millions of years to develop. He paused, letting the words sink in. We did not just catch up to you. We surpassed you. And you knew this would happen? You knew from the moment you discovered us. Dr. Im pulled up another document. This is the original report from the first alien ship that found Earth, written 400 years ago. It says, and I quote, "This species must be contained immediately. Their rate of adaptation exceeds anything in galactic history. If allowed to develop freely, they will dominate all known space within 1,000 years." The Council representatives looked at each other with horror. That report had been their most closely guarded secret. It was the real reason they had quarantined humanity. Not because humans were primitive, but because they learned too fast. They evolved too quickly. They were dangerous not because they were weak, but because they would not stay weak. You tried to keep us in a cage, Hyun said softly. You thought if you denied us resources, denied us knowledge, denied us contact with other species, we would stay small and helpless forever. He shook his head. You do not understand humans at all. He pulled up one final display. A map of the galaxy, with red dots marking hundreds of locations around Council homeworlds. Each represented a human fleet hidden and waiting. Our ships are already in position around every major system in the Confederation, Heen announced. We did not send a warning because we wanted war. We sent it because we wanted you to know exactly who was coming for you. Malkuth's form flickered wildly, cycling through colors that represented emotions humans had no words for. You cannot. The logistics alone? How did you build so many ships without us knowing? Dr. Im smiled. You stopped watching us carefully about 100 years ago. You thought we had accepted our fate? You were wrong. Ambassador Heian walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. At the door, he turned back one last time. You have 48 hours to surrender unconditionally. If you do not, we will dismantle your confederation piece by piece. Not because we want power, but because we will not allow the galaxy to be ruled by fear any longer. He looked at each representative in turn, meeting their alien eyes with his human ones. You called us animals, primitives, a disease to be quarantined. We are none of those things. We are humanity, and we have come to collect what you owe us. He walked out, Dr. Im beside him, leaving behind a chamber full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. For the first time in their long, proud history, they had no idea what to do. The war lasted 11 days. It was not the war the galaxy had expected. When humans spoke of war, Most species imagined burning cities, murdered civilians, and the cruel vengeance of conquerors. That was how the Council species had always waged war. That was the only kind of war they understood. Humanity chose a different path. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Dawn of Terra as his fleet entered orbit around Vorn. Below him, the citadel that had rejected his grandmother 300 years ago was dark and silent. The Council had surrendered after 9 days. When human ships appeared around their homeworlds and disabled their defense systems without firing a single lethal shot, they had expected death. They received only silence and a message: stand down. We are not here to destroy you. Commander Beak Hannah brought her ship alongside the Admiral's flagship. She had spent the last 11 days leading strikes against military targets across the Confederation. Not once had she ordered an attack on civilians. Not once had her ships fired on vessels that were trying to surrender. The Velthary homeworld has capitulated, she reported. Their remaining fleets have powered down their weapons. High Arbiter Malkuth has requested asylum. Tae-ho shook his head. He does not get asylum. He gets a trial. For 300 years of crimes against humanity and dozens of other species. Understood, Admiral. The true surprise of the war was not how quickly humanity won. It was what they found when they started liberating Confederation space. Lieutenant Shin Ji-won had been the first to discover the truth. Buried in intelligence files stolen from Council databases, the Confederation was not 12 species ruling the galaxy together. It was 12 masters sitting on top of hundreds of slaves. The Felori were small beings with golden fur, kept as servants and entertainment for the Velthary. The Goran were massive creatures with gentle souls, used as living construction equipment. The Manathi were brilliant engineers, forced to build weapons for species that treated them like animals. There were dozens more. Species that had been conquered and absorbed. Species that had been marked for extinction and forgotten. Species that had never known freedom in recorded history. President Kang Yuna read the reports with tears in her eyes. She had thought the Council was cruel to humanity, but she had not imagined the full horror of their empire. They kept slaves, she said to General Osung. For thousands of years, species that had done nothing wrong treated worse than animals. Osung nodded grimly. The Council's species talked about civilization and order, but their civilization was built on chains. Then we know what we must do. The liberation began immediately. Human soldiers, supported by former Confederation citizens who had joined the rebellion, spread across the galaxy. They opened prison camps and broke slave collars. They shut down factories where intelligent beings were worked to death. They brought food and medicine to species that had never received either from their masters. Captain Yunde-su led the liberation of the Felori homeworld. The small golden creatures had not seen their own planet in centuries. Taken as children and raised knowing nothing but service, when Desu's soldiers told them they were free, most did not understand. Free? An elderly Felori asked, her fur thin and gray with age. What does that mean? Desu knelt down to look her in the eyes. It means no one owns you anymore. It means you can live where you want, do what you want, be what you want. Who will tell us what to do? You will tell yourselves. The old Felori stared at him for a long moment. Then she began to cry, tears streaming down her golden face. Around her, other Felori joined in, a lifetime of suppressed emotion finally breaking free. On Vorn, the citadel that had once represented galactic oppression was being transformed. Workers from a dozen species tore down the symbols of Council authority. The great chamber where representatives had voted to quarantine humanity was converted into a memorial, with the names of every species that had suffered under Confederation rule carved into its walls. Ambassador Noheen supervised the transition. He was tired, his old body pushed past its limits, but he would not rest until the work was done. Dr. Im Yunbai worked beside him. Cataloging the crimes of the old regime for the trials that would come, the Ormithy representative wants to negotiate, Hien said one morning. He says his people were forced to participate in Council policies. He claims they are victims too. Raised an eyebrow. The Ormathy conquered 6 species before joining the council. They ate the leadership of 3 of those species alive, in public ceremonies.
I know.
I told him he could negotiate the terms of his trial. In the ruins of the old order, something new was being built. It was called the Galactic Union, and it operated on principles that had never been tried before in this part of space. Every species had a voice. Every vote counted equally. No one could own another being. No one could be treated as less than a person. Admiral Park Tae-ho attended the first session of the new Union Council. He sat not at the head of the table, but among the other representatives, one voice among many. Beside him sat members of species that humanity had never met before the war, beings who were still learning what it meant to be free. "We could rule them all," one of his officers had said before the session. "We won. We have the power. Why share it?" Tae-ho had looked at the young man with disappointment, because that would make us the same as them. Power is not the point. Never was. The session began with a moment of silence for all who had died under council rule. Then, one by one, representatives from 47 species stood and spoke. Some told stories of oppression. Some spoke of hope. Some simply said thank you, over and over, till their translators could not keep up. A young Filori, barely more than a child, was the last to speak. She had been rescued from a Velthri pleasure ship, one of thousands of her kind used for entertainment that humanity did not have words for. "I do not know the word for what you have given us," she said, her voice small in the great chamber. "I do not think my language has such a word. We were never allowed to learn it." She paused, collecting herself. "But I know how it feels. It feels like the first time I saw the stars without chains on my arms. It feels like this moment, standing here, being asked what I think." She looked at Admiral Tae-ho. "Why did you help us?" "We have nothing to offer you. We cannot fight. We have no technology. We are not useful." Tae-ho stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to him, "'cause 300 years ago," he said, "my grandmother stood in a chamber like this one and asked only to be treated as an equal. She was laughed at. She was rejected. She died without ever seeing her dream come true." He paused. "We did not free you because you were useful. We freed you because no one deserves to be a slave. Because the galaxy should not be ruled by those who think some lives matter more than others." On Earth, President Kang Yuna gave the final address of the war. Her words were broadcast to every world, every station, every ship in the former Confederation. Translators worked in 100 languages to carry her message. "For 300 years, you called us primitive. You called us aggressive. You called us unworthy of joining your civilization." She stood tall, her voice carrying the weight of all those generations of pain and hope. "You are half right. We are aggressive, but only toward injustice. We were primitive, but we learned fast. And worthy? We never needed your approval to know our worth." She looked directly into the camera, speaking now not just to aliens, but to the humans who had fought and sacrificed to make this moment possible. "The old order is dead. The Galactic Confederation is dissolved forever. In its place, we have built something better. A true union, every species equal. Every voice heard, every being free." Her eyes hardened, and her voice grew cold. "But let this be a warning to anyone who dreams of rebuilding the old tyranny, to anyone who would enslave or exploit or dominate. Humanity is watching. Humanity remembers, letting the silence stretch across the stars if you threaten the peace we have built. If you try to put chains back on the beings we have freed. Hear this promise from the people of Earth, across the galaxy." Former slaves and former masters alike held their breath. "We are coming." The Memorial Hall on Vorn. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood alone before the list of names. So many dead. So many who had suffered. His grandmother's name was there now, too, carved in stone. Honored as the first human to stand before the council and demand equality. We did it," he whispered. "Not the way you wanted, grandmother, but we did it." Somewhere out among the stars, in the new union that humanity had forged from the ashes of empire, beings of 100 different species looked up at the night sky. For the first time in their history, they looked without fear. The stars no longer belonged to masters and slaves. The stars belonged to everyone, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way forever.